Hello, and welcome to the Learn It All podcast. I'm your host, Damon, and I'm also the CEO of Learn It, a live learning platform that has upskilled over 2 million individuals over the past 3 decades. Imagine for a moment that you've worked 25 years for different companies as a W-2 employee, that you've traveled around the world, you've been promoted, you've led teams, you've had a really successful career. Then one day you sit down and you look at your finances and you say, you know what, I've made some really good money, but not enough that's going to allow me to retire comfortably at 63 years old. That is the realization that our guest today came to. So our guest, my really good friend, Lindsay Lovell, is a serial entrepreneur. She's got an extensive real estate portfolio, and she's got other businesses too, like an outsourced VA firm and even a dog walking business. The theme of our conversation, I would say, is stepping out of your comfort zone and trying things. And we talk a lot about being assertive and asking questions, whether it's getting on a call with the bank and asking for something, or even reaching out to a mentor. I really appreciate Lindsay's insights on what are the key traits to be an entrepreneur. I love how Lindsay talks about how important continuous learning is in the journey of entrepreneurs. One of the topics of conversation that I thought was really fascinating is Lindsay's approach to taking calculated risks and being comfortable stepping into the unknown. So if you're somebody who's interested in learning about real estate investments, or you want to jump in and have a side hustle or become a serial entrepreneur, you're going to want to tune in for this episode today. So grab your pencil, because Lindsay is a fantastic guest and you're going to walk away with a ton of great actionable advice. Thank you. So Lindsay, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am great, Damon. So excited to be here with you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Well, one thing I wanted to bring up right away is not only is Lindsay a fantastic entrepreneur, she's also one of my closest friends and somebody I really admire. So I'm excited to have you share with our audience your journey today.
I know, Damon. We've both seen each other's careers grow and take different twists and turns, and it's really fun to be able to be here today to talk about everything.
And here we are. So let's just take it back. Let's start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So I this amount, you'll be able to retire at this age and live to this long. And it was like, okay, maybe 67 and a half. And as long as I don't live a day past 96 years old, I'll be okay on a budget. And I was like, what am I slaving away? I've done everything right. And yet I'm still in the rat race. What is going on? And life works in such wonderful ways, because right around that time is when, not that the pandemic was wonderful, but what I was forced to kind of stop and reevaluate and do during that time led to all of the ventures and journeys that I am now. And so COVID came. My W-2 job came to a grinding halt, but I still had the blessing of still having a paycheck, but with a lot of time. And I like to be busy. You know this about me. I always kind of have my hands in different things, but always work for other people, right? And my husband said, why don't you take a look at real estate investing? I know this guy and he owns, 100 doors in Kansas City, Missouri. Go ahead and talk to Jason. And I did. And he pointed me in the direction of great, podcasts and resources and online. And that was
Lindsay and I both live in Northern California, in the San Francisco Bay Area. So what a leap it is for you to go out. And where did you invest in first? Was it Missouri?
Yeah, exactly. So it was this tiny town called St. Joseph, Missouri, which is about 45 minutes north of Kansas City, Missouri, in the airport. And you can totally, relate when somebody told me I could buy a house there for $25,000 cash, put $40,000 rehab into it, and have a house that somebody's going to pay me $800 a month to rent. I almost fell over. I pay $20,000 to own a parking spot in my, 700 square foot building, condo. So it was really mind blowing in that sense. And I think the hurdle was just understanding how can I do that and access those types of assets from a distance.
And how did you go about it funding wise? Did you use your own personal funding to start off with, or did you go out and friends and family, or how'd that look?
That's a great question. The first one, we did our own cash. Because of the way I bought it through a wholesaler direct, I had to do the full 25,000 down and then fund it with my own money for the rehab. But as I've gone and I've built my business, I've built relationships with banks. And I think one of the beautiful aspects of real estate, I often refer to this IDEAL acronym. And one of the L in IDEAL, and we can go over the rest, is that you can use leverage. You can't go over to the stock market and say, I want $100,000 worth of Tesla stock, but I only want to give you 20%, 20,000 and reap all the benefits. Whereas in real estate, you can put down only a small amount and leverage other people's money to make money. And that's a really powerful tool because then 100,000 can go a lot further than just elsewhere, say the stock market.
Totally get it. Now, the initial investment, you said you put up what, 25 or 65 of your own money?
Yeah. So bought it for 25, put 40,000 in of 20,000 in of rehab. So I was in it for 45,000. And then I turned around since I rehabbed it, added value to the bank. And they said, your house is now worth $65,000. So now I had forced equity, right? So creating wealth, and the bank let me tap into some of that. So I got all the money out that I had put in because they'll not give me a loan on the new value. And I was able to rinse and repeat. So it's not like we had this large nest egg to go around and buy all these, $45,000 homes. We were creating the value and then snowballing that value to move on to different projects and grow and grow and grow.
But even up front, putting in 25,000 your own money, it has to, first of all, it takes courage. But what was your decision-making process around there? Because I assume, did you just jump in or did you think about what potential negative outcomes could have happened?
Yeah. You know what, Damon? It's so crazy. And you and I were chatting a little bit about this beforehand, is I am so conservative. My dad was an entrepreneur. I always thought he was crazy. I was like, never in a million years, risky, crazy, like collecting my paycheck. And so for me, I am shocked at how quickly I was able to change my mindset and get behind this once I had done the research. So yes, it was nerve wracking. $25,000 plus another $20,000 in rehab is not chump change, right? So what I did is I sat down and went through the process and said, how much am I comfortable, right? If we lost it all tomorrow, we're not going to be out destitute, having to get a second, third job if this all went away. So I said, that is what I'm comfortable with. Then I looked at, okay, so what are my options? What market, what type of asset can I purchase within this budget? And then once I narrowed in on the market, I found my team out there to help me identify the right resource and the contractor and then pull the trigger. It happened somewhat fast, but with all of the resources that there are today, I was able to learn and constantly be analyzing that I felt that I had the knowledge. I think one of the biggest things that I
Like a big decision. I'm not talking about where what you're gonna order for dinner. But maybe if you're gonna move out of town, or if you're gonna invest heavily into something, I always like to use a term I call it purposeful awfulizing. Instead of being so positive all the time and only thinking about how positive, what are the best outcomes, I like to look at something. Okay, a year out, what is the absolute worst case scenario? And can I survive that scenario? And that sounds like what you and your husband, Corey, did, right? You kind of looked at it and said, even if things fall by the wayside, then we're still going to be okay, right? And
Exactly.
so super key. And then I love how you talk about continuously learning, right? Because the real estate was something pretty new for you. So I'm sure it could also be a humbling experience where you get in there and maybe you don't know everything you need to know. But do you have any? I know you mentioned, I think, Jason, but were there other mentors that you could leverage and you could reach out to? And how do those relationships help you?
Absolutely. I mean, I never in a million years would have found this tiny town, St. Joseph, but in the community of Bigger Pockets, which is a really big platform for real estate investors, had connected with somebody who lived in Reno, thought maybe I'll invest there. And he said, oh no, it's too expensive. I invest in St. Joseph, Missouri. And I think one of the things that I did that really got his attention and made him become such an active, willing mentor in my journey is so many people you reach out and you have a coffee chat and that's it, right? But I continued to follow up with him and share my progress and show him not only did I take up an hour of his time, but that I'm acting on what he taught me
I love
and
it.
I'm serious, right? And so he even told me after our third call, he's like, I want to help you because you are actually taking what I'm giving you and putting it into practice. And that's really exciting. And a lot of people in the real estate investing world want to pay it forward. When the tide rises, all boats rise. And so I had Pat, who is amazing. And then along the way, you just start to find these communities and connect and ask questions. And you start to learn that everybody was here once. I remember sweating bullets when I was calling the first bank because I didn't know what, this term meant or, 5-7 year arm and escrow and all of that. And I just finally just said, I'm never going to learn if I don't ask. They'll never see me again if I don't ever, and just put yourself out there, take intensive notes, and the process is part of the fun.
Again, I love it. And really, for everybody, for our listeners out there, real estate, non-real estate, anything you're doing, Lindsay's advice is spot on. If you don't ask, you're never going to know. And I found in my career too, I've got all these mentors, these people, especially my buddies, as you know, at Canadian Ranch, they love helping you especially if you kind of keep them abreast of what you're doing and you're thankful. But none of this will happen if you don't ask, right? And when it sounded like when with the bank, that's a tough conversation. But really, what do you have to lose? The worst they can say is just no, right?
Yeah. And before I found the bank relationship that I have now, that is amazing. I go back and I keep everything in my Evernote and I called 39 different banks and got no's, not to me personally, but that they didn't do the type of financing that I was looking and needed. Right. And you hear it takes 99 no's, but all you need is that one yes. And maybe that yes comes as your second call and maybe it comes as your 110th call.
Yeah, we're going to get into that a little bit more for entrepreneurs in general. But can you tell us, give us a little bit more of your journey on your real estate? So where has it gone since?
Yeah. So that was, July of 2020. Fast forward to now. I personally, under my company, own over 72 properties throughout the United States. It's a blend of long-term rentals, Airbnb, vacation rentals. And the most recent thing that I've pivoted into that's also been a great sort of passion project and giving back to the community is creating recovery residence living communities. So sober living homes for men and women dealing with substance use disorder. And so that's been a really interesting pivot that my entrepreneur journey has led me to create this company called Revive Residence.
How did that even come to mind? The sober living.
So one of the beauties of real estate too is that you can, and you always should, before you buy anything, have exit plan ideal, exit plan backup, backup, right? The worst, the meaningful awfulizing, right? And with assets like single family homes, there's so much you can do with them. And we had found ourselves where we had purchased some homes for Airbnb and short term rentals, and city regulations changed, and we could no longer use them for that purpose. And it didn't make sense financially to rent them long term. It wasn't going to cover the costs. And so I was reaching out to my real estate community, just reading blogs and posts. How can I pivot this, if not selling it? And came across this idea of group homes, and in San Francisco, we sort of do that naturally. We rent by the room, right? It's very natural here. It's not in all other communities, but there's also people that for affordability, especially these days, can't take on a full lease, but need a safe place to live. And as I went down that, started talking to people, niched on this opportunity to specifically partner with rehab, mental health clinics, parole officers for those dealing with substance use disorders, and providing those homes and accountability where they can hopefully be successful in achieving and maintaining sobriety.
And how's it going so far?
It is great. It's definitely as much a labor of emotion and love, because right now, I am the company with the help of my virtual assistants, but I have 7 homes, with anywhere from 4 to 10 people in a house that all have my cell phone number, that are kind of like, in ways, I call them my adult kids, right? I am helping them through some of the hardest times in their life. I am dealing with fights over who stole whose mascara as much as, I am having a trouble holding a job. Lindsay, how can I, work this out? So it is, it's been very interesting. And, we don't have kids. So I found that very rewarding in that sense of getting to nurture. But it is truly, right now, very, very kind of labor intensive, and I'm learning as I go, but, hopefully expanding and starting to, partner. And even, the government has realized the need for these types of things. So hopefully starting to get some funding and bring it even to our, community here in the Bay Area.
That's great. I mean, at some point, though, you're going to have to, and I know we're going to talk about your VAs and the other business you have, but at some point, you're not going to have the time to be able for everybody to reach out to you all the time. I mean, because then you're just going to have no work-life balance.
Yeah.
The further, I mean, it's tough, right? I mean, because you want to be there. I mean, I think you and I are a lot similar in a lot of ways, where I'm always want to help people, right? I always want to help people and give back, but you also got to make sure that you're protective of your time, so you can, whether it's for your family or other ventures as well.
Exactly. And, Damon, to that point, that's how it really started. Everybody was coming to me, and I think one aspect of me as an entrepreneur is I kind of build the plane as it goes, and go back and put the processes in place. And so one of the biggest things I did is finally said, I can't have everybody coming to me when we're out toilet paper. There needs to be one point of contact. That's the house manager, and the house manager is going to talk to my VA. And I don't need to hear about it unless it needs to get bubbled up to me. And so my work-life balance really has gotten a lot better since I put that in place. And to your point, started building that team and putting those processes so it isn't all coming to me.
Where do you see your real estate portfolio or in the next 2 or 3 years? What's your goals?
So, my husband and I, when we talk about this, we're like, for us, there's so many ways you can do real estate. And we like the idea of the passive. We bought these with the idea of the long-term hold, and like to think of them as little tiny baby oil wells that are pumping constantly, whether I'm on the beach or sitting here talking to you. And they're not, spurting liquid gold, but you get enough of an oil field, and it is enough passive cash that can be life-changing. And so right now, with the market the way it is, we're holding on. We're, continuing to let our things appreciate, rent. I think once the market picks back up, we'll probably reevaluate and decide, what is bringing in money? What do we kind of maybe need to cut loose? I really like the single family asset. I don't know if I'll ever go into the big multifamily. So I see maybe changing out some of those assets, but just really keeping that stable portfolio. And I see an opportunity really to grow with the substance use disorder homes, and creating a business model. And hopefully someday, the entrepreneurial dream of being able to exit and sell out the portfolio of those homes to a private equity firm or a private company.
I think what's important, what I'm hearing you say is you're thinking about, well, right now you're being conservative, right? You want to test the waters, see where things are at, but also the importance of having the self-awareness of like, okay, here's what I like. I like these single family homes, maybe multi-tenants, not, sticking with your strengths for the most part, right? And because I think a lot of times people don't give as much forethought as you do, and they just kind of spray and pray and see what happens. And that that could, be wildly successful, or it could crash and burn. So I think it's really important and smart of you to really think through the next steps as far as how your journey will continue. I think
Thank
that's
you.
awesome.
Yeah. And I think too, people, it's really easy. You listen to these podcasts and these stories for the shiny object, and single family homes. They're not the sexy thing in real estate. It's, I own 100 doors because you have, a big building that you only own 5% of, but you get to say this and that's, and I think by kind of just saying, I'm okay not doing the sexy, cool thing, there's less almost competition. And I've been able to be probably more successful quicker by not going with, what's the cool, shiny new thing.
Right. And I think it's important for everybody. It's like, what's important to you? Is it important to be on Instagram with a million followers, out there, ringing your own bell, or do you want to take care of yourself financially and be successful? And a lot of times, I had a guy on the show the other day, Jay Dixon, great, and he helps ex athletes become CEOs. And a lot of times they're not in sexy businesses. They're plumbing companies. They're, things like that. But at the end of the day, they make a ton of money and they're successful long term. So I think that's great. Now, let's take it back to just entrepreneurship in general. What do you think the key traits are for successful entrepreneurs?
I think one of the biggest things is not that you have to be a risk seeker or a big risk taker. Cause like I said, I'm not that, but comfortable with figuring out calculated risk. There's a risk to every deal I do, but the way that I underwrite it and the way that I go about it, I feel that I've taken into account as much as I possibly can to feel that I'm putting my best foot forward and making an informed decision. I think the other biggest thing is along that is you have to be comfortable working within ambiguity because you're not going to have all the answers. You never will. And a lot of it's going to feel uncomfortable. You're not going to really know. And a lot of what I do is, hey, secure the deal and then figure out how the heck to do it afterwards. Right. So I'm going after something. I've done the best that I can, the due diligence. And then I'm working in a gray area to see if it can work. And I always make sure I'm in situations where I can, get out. Maybe it has a little bit of a financial implication, but, you really have to be comfortable pulling things together as things are in motion. I also think to be successful, it's so easy to want to say, I've got to do this. It's on me. Asking for help, realizing you don't have to do it all yourself, that it's okay to outsource and you absolutely should outsource, then you are going to be 10 times more successful as an entrepreneur, building a team around you versus trying to do it alone.
Totally agree. A lot of entrepreneurs might say, though, hey, that's great. Lindsay's got things going. I'm just getting started. And what I hear you also saying is it is okay to be vulnerable, right? It's okay to be that vulnerability, I believe, is not weakness, right? It's okay to be vulnerable and humble and to be able to ask people for advice or what should I do? And you also need to
do they need to have? Where do they need to be sourced from? Kind of, what is my secret, sauce of the ideal candidate? More was testing out to see, okay, is this even something that other people would use? Is it just me that's, taken on so much? And place someone that he didn't have wasn't super helpful and great experience. But what I did was learn from, okay, what does the next candidate that I do outsource, what do they need to have? What systems do I need to put in place? And it was a little embarrassing because, it's a friend, it's a colleague. But if I hadn't done that, I would have never known, and also known that there is the need. People do need virtual assistants, and having a way to help them quickly and easily connect with somebody that meets their needs is a niche opportunity that I can help meet.
What I'm hearing you say is, well, one, you're out there and you're learning, right? And you're asking questions. And even when I reached out to you for a VA, and we didn't hire one off the bat, but we've already discussed that we are moving forward with you on it, right? You asked the question. You said, "Hey, what should I do differently? Where did I fall short?" Right? So you're asking the questions because you want to learn. Where do you think, with that being said, where do you think curiosity plays a role when it comes to being an entrepreneur?
You have to be curious, but I think it has to also be mindful or focused, right? Because the other thing you can do is the shiny object, squirrel. Oh, I'm curious. I need to learn about that. And so I think as an entrepreneur, I think it's important to be curious, but I think it's also important to accept failure or a non-strength and walk away quickly. So it's okay to ask questions. It's absolutely, you should never be embarrassed. But again, you don't have to know everything, right? Sometimes the best thing is knowing who does know that. So I think having focused curiosity is important, but it can also, keep it in check.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it sounds like, so you have the VA business, but you're also a coach, right? And now, do you coach specifically women in real estate or women entrepreneurs? How does your coaching business work?
Yeah. So I originally started off wanting to focus on women, just being one and coming from the world of private equity and finance, where it was really hard to be a woman in the man's world and succeed. And as I went along and did this, it was really exciting to connect with other friends or women that were like single moms and really just struggling, and giving them this opportunity that they never knew was there to be able to start creating wealth and generational wealth for themselves and their family. But ironically, as I've started coaching, I've had almost as many, if not more, men reach out. And there's, I love working with anybody that wants to learn. So really, the Millionaires March is my coaching company where I help individuals meet them with where they're at, because everybody comes in with a different level of experience. Some people have zero, some people already have 2 properties, some people have 5 and want to understand to grow or to pivot into something new. Meet them with where they're at. I don't like doing like here's an 8-week course and we're going to fit you in this, box of what I have to learn. And take them through their journey with the idea that hopefully within, 90 to 120 days, they're going to have purchased either their first home or their next home, or have an idea of how their business is expanding and growing.
So, as being a coach, what have you learned yourself from working with your coachees?
There is always something to be learned. And I think one of the things too for me is that I don't think we ever give ourselves enough credit. Things that I now take as second nature, I know how to do, feel comfortable underwriting, doing all that, is really valuable and impactful and helpful to other people. And I think we don't often give ourselves the pat on the back of being like, wow, I am an expert in this field. I do have a seat at the table. I am a name to be recognized, and giving myself the confidence and the credit from everything that I've accomplished, and then taking that enthusiasm and making sure that I'm sharing it with my students.
So essentially, what I'm hearing you talk about is, and trust me, I've been there, been there myself too. When I, came out with my book, The Learn It All Leader, last year, I was like, well, what is anybody going to get value out of it? Should I even be putting a book out? And it's amazing, some of the feedback you get from people, and you realize, hey, maybe I am a thought leader, and I do have a lot of value to bring to the world. And I think everybody deals with what we're talking about: self-doubt and an imposter syndrome at some point in their career, right? There's another recent guest we had. She talked about Dr. Michelle Robinson having a love file. And really what that meant was that every time something went well for her, she kind of put it into an Outlook note or something, so that when she came up to a situation where she felt like she didn't belong, she would refer back to that to help give herself, a pat on the back. And that's something that I think is great. What, because it's important to reflect back and think about, hey, I do belong. Look at the successes I've had. What is a tip or some practical advice you either give to your coachees or you do for yourself to help overcome those moments of self-doubt or imposter syndrome?
Yeah. So, and I get it again, ironically, with a lot of women, I don't own any property, or I only own one door. And I like to remind people that the fact that you've even taken the initiative to learn and understand and develop this value of believing that real estate is going to help me create a better future for myself, and even wanting that as an individual, seeking out a coach, engaging with a coach, is a million steps and initiative and value driven action more than 99% of the rest of the people out there just going around playing video games in their spare time and, being, and not knocking that, but, like, you have taken that initiative. It takes energy. It takes time, right? You're giving something up to be able to take on something new like this in life, right? Everything's sort of a trade-off when it comes to time and energy. And people don't give themselves enough credit for even taking those steps and realizing, oh, wow, I'm already on my way.
I totally agree with you. And it's also, it doesn't, I always like to use the term, life's a marathon, not a sprint. And just do one step at a time and celebrate little wins along the way, right? And a little win could be like just calling up the bank and getting a no. Hey, great. I had the courage to go out and make the call, and it didn't work out, but it always gives you an opportunity to learn, right?
Exactly. And that's kind of what my program does, is break down those steps and help them through it, right? Sometimes I do get on the phone and call the banks with them and say, it seems daunting when you say you're going to go buy this and you're going to finance. So let's break it down into steps that are, manageable, actionable, those SMART goals. And I also like to say to that point, Damon, I hate to use the word deadline. I like the word action line. So set a time that that is your drop point to take action. Keep yourself out of that analysis paralysis. When are you going to take action?
Can you give me an example of when you've helped a client implement that?
Yeah. So, I have a client who's wonderful, and she already owns one home. And she's just been in analysis paralysis before she came to me of, where should I buy next? And what should I do? Should I wait? Should I not? And so what her and I did is I said, we're going to work. We're going to have 6 sessions. And by then I feel confident we're going to say that you are going to make a decision on a market and when you're going to start putting offers in. And so, then said, all right, and to prove to you that I'm confident you can do this, here are kind of, the steps and what we're going to accomplish with each session so that you can feel confident. And again, reminding them, we're never going to have all the answers, right? There's always going to be ambiguity, but here's what you need to do, because look at all the time that's been wasted this past year that you could have been building equity, right? So I was like,
And move forward with it. Another thing that I've done over the years is I've kept a decision journal. So if it's a big decision, Like for instance, if I was going to hire a COO, I'd write down all the things that maybe I'm worried about or could be potential blind spots or what I really like. And then 6 months or a year later, I kind of go back to that and see if there was any blind spots that I didn't see. It's always a
It's amazing. And that is so important because life is short.
life is short and time is one thing you can't get back, right?
Exactly.
And you see out there, and literally, if you do the math, you could get a solid, a really good VA for about $5-6 an hour, really, right? And I always like to tell people, what's your time worth, and are you being penny smart and pound stupid with it? Because let's take real estate out of the equation, but let's say that you're a consultant who can charge $125 an hour, yet you're spending time sending out invoices uh, that that could be outsourced for even $15-20 an hour. Look at the delta on what you're losing there. What would you say are the top 5 tasks that your VAs could really help people with?
I like to say, overall in general, anything that doesn't have to be specifically you, they can do. So they do all my social media. I have not touched my social media, even to create a video or anything, in months. Posting, creating, editing, engagements. These individuals that I find and source are incredibly talented. I'm in the middle of submitting a grant, multi-million-dollar grant to the city of Oakland. My VA, took the first initial stab at writing it out, pulling everything together, and giving me something to then go off of and create a grant, which is huge, right? Sometimes it's like, where do we start? Vendor management. So hey, we've got a leak at this house. Half the time, I don't even know when. Admin, anything that is repetitive. So tasks that are done regularly that just have a process, that's great to outsource. You say, here's the process. Here's what you do every time we get a new resident in our sober living house. Bam, 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 bam. Done. Anything that's repetitive is the first thing you should absolutely outsource. Anything that you hate doing, spend your time to. What are the things you dread doing? Can you outsource those? Because there is an emotional cost too to doing things that you don't like. That, whether you like it or not, impacts your energy and ability on
purchase a place? What do you think about that?
I look at coaching now that I can reflect and look back and say real estate investing in ways is kind of like climbing, Mount Shasta or Mount Everest, right? You can go out there, you can go to the store and piece together the different tools that you need and buy it and look at a map and map your way up and kind of grunt it out. Or you can hire an expert, a Sherpa that's going to make sure you have the right tools, show you the safe and tried and true ways and get you up there safely, quickly, and efficiently. And so I highly recommend one of the first things to do is to find a mentor or a coach, right? It will exponentially rocket your success. The other thing that I recommend is just start absorbing information. The beauty of today is there are resources like this. I constantly have my AirPods in, blow drying my hair, vacuuming, walking the dogs, because you can just start to learn. And again, just be a sponge. Don't worry that you don't know what a burr is. You'll hear that acronym enough that you'll just suddenly be like, oh yeah, I know what that is. It doesn't sound like Mandarin Chinese anymore. So just be a sponge. Don't beat yourself up. Take it all in, find the time. And I do recommend, if you want to go far, go alone. If you want to go fast, go together. That saying, finding a coach, a mentor, a buddy, an accountability partner.
I love what you're talking about because really everybody's busy, right? Whether you have kids, whether you have a W-2 job that's keeping you busy, or you're an entrepreneur. And the theme of like what we've really talked about today is learn it all, right? I mean, being curious and learning. And I talk about this quite a bit. You can find time to learn. You can be creative, and you don't have to retain all that information. But like you said, whether you're taking out the garbage or walking dogs, use that time effectively. Hey, it's okay to play video games or binge on Netflix, whatever. Sometimes, but if you really want to get ahead in life, you got to leverage some of that time for learning opportunities, whether it's podcast, reading, or doing all kinds of things, right?
Exactly. And sometimes it's like, oh, I don't want to pay, a couple $1,000 or $1,000 for a coach, whatever. But then it's like, if I had done that, I can think of one deal alone where knowing how to have structured a contract with one single line that a coach later taught me
Everything.
saved me $10,000.
Yeah. Yeah. No, again, it goes back to penny smart and pound stupid, right? Paying $1,000 now that could win you one deal is huge. But we're coming up on time. I got a couple of questions for you. What was your favorite Learn It class you ever taught? Because Lindsay also used to be a Learn It. I mean, not only is she a serial entrepreneur, but she'd carve out time and she'd teach our soft skills classes.
Yes, I forget the exact name, but I love it and I still use it a lot today. It was the communications class. And I remember one of the facts that I learned in preparing and learning for that class is, how important the three ways we kind of interpret communication between, body language, the words we say, and the tone of voice. And today and age, when so much is done over text, over email, we forget how important it really is to, especially critical conversations, make sure we're having them at the very least over the phone, if not virtual or in person. I loved teaching that class. I think it was so tangible and relevant to everybody.
That's awesome. Now, here's a tougher question, especially since I've known you for so long and you're my wife's best friend. Tell us something about you that most people don't realize.
I am incredibly introverted. Everybody's like, oh, you're out. I am very shy. We moved around a lot growing up. And so I was forced to learn to make friends or eat lunch by myself. But I, am a bit of a homebody. And if I could, hang out, me, myself, and I and the dogs. And my energy comes from being alone versus like out at a wild, crazy party. Although I can hang with the best of them.
You can't hang with the best with them. So before we wrap up here in a minute or two, what else? What else do you want to leave our audience with, whether about real estate or entrepreneurship?
I think that it is all about taking that first step and even just listening to this podcast and making sure that you always have a next step planned. And one of the simplest things you can do is go out and, hey, best friend, hold me accountable. We're going to talk in 2 weeks. Ask me if I accomplished that one step. It doesn't have to be anything big. I listened to 2 podcasts. Did I accomplish it? What's next? I'm going to listen to 2 more. I'm going to send an email. I'm going to, put time and just find somebody, because it's fun as well to, like your point, celebrate those little milestones of success and realize the journey is a bunch of small steps that lead to that big success.
And the journey never really ends, though, does it, Lindsay? Right?
No.
I mean, it's always going. I mean, I like to, difference between the learn it all and the know it all is the learn it all realizes that the journey is there's continuous growth opportunities.
Absolutely. Always. Until the day we die, we are, learning, growing, changing.
Yeah. And like you said, if you live to be 96, knowing how strict and how well you take care of yourself, you'll be probably 102. So
thanks, Damon. And I'll have the financial means to live that long comfortably.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Well, Lindsay, you've been an awesome guest. I mean, I really, really mean it. I mean, we've talked about a bunch today. We talked about your real estate journey, how you get into the single family market in areas you've never been in, and advice for individuals who want to explore entrepreneurship and the mindset of entrepreneurship, the value of VAs and how you really can take back your time and work on the business instead of in the business. And, one of the highlights really is continuous learning, being curious, but focus being curious, as well as the importance of, hey, just having the courage to have mentors and also not being afraid to fail, right? To ask people for help and learning from those no's. So you've been awesome. How can our audience connect with you?
Yeah. So I love connecting with people. If they want to go to millionairesmarchfreestrategysession.com, and I'm sure your wonderful team will put that in the notes with the podcast, but you can go on there, sign up for a time to connect 30 minutes with me. No charge. That's, how can I help you set up a plan, accountability, if you want to learn more about my coaching company, but millionairesmarchfreestrategysession.com. Go there. Would love to connect and find some time.
Awesome, Lindsay. So audience, listeners, if you enjoyed our conversation today, please like and subscribe on your favorite channel. And until next time, stay curious and keep learning. Have a great day, everyone. See ya.